Hey, welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. And before we get started, just a couple things I want to say, and if this is going to be long and winded, I apologize now. Number one, I want to thank all of you who have subscribed to my channel recently. I truly appreciate it, and thank you so much for the support. Number two, if you haven't already seen it, I did a podcast with Out of the Blank podcast 6 days ago. I will leave a link below in this video description of that, so you can go ahead and check it out. If you're curious what I look like and you don't subscribe to my Twitter or my Instagram account, you can go and check out the YouTube podcast and see what I look like. Just on the side note of the title of the podcast, I see myself more as a cryptid enthusiast rather than a cryptid hunter or investigator. By the way, the links to my Instagram and Twitter accounts are in the description of this video. And now to the stories, guys, what you've been waiting for. So we have 3 fantastic stories coming to you today. And I think you guys know the drill by now. Go grab yourself something to eat or a drink and sit back and relax. All right, this first story takes place in the summer of August 1964 in Ventura County at a location called Pine Mountain Campground. An unknown ape-like creature walked upright out of the thick patch of bushes and stood looking for several seconds up and down the fire lane. I cocked the hammer back on the .32 caliber carbine, shouldered the weapon, and began to press the trigger. Something in my head ordered me not to shoot the creature. I call it divine intervention. I asked myself, was this a bear? No. I instantly decided it did not look like a bear because there was not a long protruding snout jutting out from the face. Besides, bears were not legal game in this area of California. It certainly was not a buck. Never mind the fact that if it was a deer, there was no horns on this animal. I immediately told myself it looked like a monkey man. I can hear myself saying these words today out loud. What the hell is a monkey man doing out here in the mountains? In the meantime, as I made the move to shoulder my carbine, I spoke those words. The big animal turned towards me from the waist up. Looking over the sights of the little carbine, I observed this being to be about 7 or 8 feet tall, with well-muscled, long-hair arms hanging down to the waist. The hands looked almost human. I remember noticing these things as I slowly put down the gun. This creature was completely covered in long, dark brown hair from head to feet and appeared to have a huge barrel chest. Some other striking features that I noticed were a flat, square-jawed face, a flat, dark-looking nose, no noticeable hair on the face, and a sloping forehead. I don't remember seeing any signs of ears on this animal. Too much long hair around the sides of the head, and there was no discernible neck. Since I had no idea what this creature was, I've always been glad to have instantly decided not to shoot it. Thank God for protective angels. The other thing I thought about at the time was this could have been some idiot in a monkey suit playing a prank on some hunter like me. But then only a village idiot would dress up in a monkey costume and roam around the mountains during deer hunting season. As I contemplated the incident today, I realized now that this was a Bigfoot, and it had both seen and heard me. I could not tell what sex it was because of all the long dark hair around the body. However, now that I've seen numerous showings of the Patterson film in which Patty was documented, I must guesstimate it was a male in gender. Within 10 to 15 seconds, as quickly as the creature had entered my field of vision, it calmly made about 2 strides across the open fire lane, parted some tall bushes with well-muscled, uplifted hairy arms, and disappeared into the thick bushes. Right away I noticed that it was now standing inside the screen of thick brush, alongside of the fireland, like it was watching me. I could readily discern the huge dark shape as it stood there for possibly a minute or so. Apparently it was looking at me sitting up the hill on the ground. I didn't know at the time whether it was going to attack me or leave. I kept the little carbine in the ready position across my chest and slowly stood up to get a better look at this unknown animal. I decided at that moment when I stood up that if this thing would charge me, I was going to run back up the hill to my dad, unless it got too close to me. Then, and only then, would I consider shooting the animal. I admit it, I was scared fit to wet my pants. I now recall seeing the bushes shake violently as a dark shape stepped out of sight. I slowly sat down again and listened to its rustling footsteps as the huge ape-man descended down the hill away from me. Boy, was I glad it was gone. Now the shake started. If I had been smoking these days, I would have lit a cigarette and probably smoked a whole pack. Finally, after about 15 minutes, when the stillness was broken by singing birds and scurrying chipmunks, I got up enough nerve to carefully go down to the spot where I had seen this creature. Was I dreaming? No, because there in the loose dirt I saw a couple of huge human-like barefooted tracks where it had crossed the fire lane. Then a raunchy odor hit my nose. I remember thinking it smelled like a horrendous fart. In fact, at the time, I decided to call the creature Fart Creature. I know that this is not a very endearing name for such a marvelous being, but that's how my scared brain was working that fateful morning. Deciding now that would be a good time to leave this area, I quickly walked back up the hill to where I had been sitting and stood there for a few minutes. Clearly, I had seen something unexplained. Now I had to decide if I should tell my dad or just keep quiet. To tell you the truth, I was afraid to tell my father because I knew he would never believe me. I thought he would most certainly take my hunting privileges away for seeing buggers in the hills. I began slowly walking back up the fire break towards my father in the piney flats above me. I remember now that he had asked me why I had left the deer stand so early. I think I replied that I was hungry and bored as not seeing a buck right after daylight. He probably chewed me out for leaving so early, but at least I didn't incur his wrath for telling a bugger story. Honestly, for many years I forgot about this incident. I had to go back to military school the next week, and the ensuing years would later consume my life with other things. Of course, I never really did totally forget about seeing a Sasquatch. It was only later on in life, after getting married, serving in the military, and leaving California for Florida, that this sighting began to trouble my conscience. How I kept it a secret for this many years I will never know. I guess I was frightened that people would think that I was crazy. Usually I'm the blabby type, sharing plenty of secrets with almost anybody, especially family or friends. But this deal? Oh no, I kept these cards close, too close for too long. I swear to all persons reading this report that the facts documented here are recalled to the best of my abilities after 44 years and 1 month in the past. The photo of the Bigfoot creature from the Patterson film looks very much like the being I observed in August of 1964. Wow, this was a fantastic story and very well written. I have to say, he had me sitting at the edge of my seat throughout the story. He also made me chuckle, though, when he mentioned what this creature smelled like. But anyways, guys, let's move on to the next story. All right, this next story takes place on the fall of October 1959, and this one is in Yuba County. Beale is an active Air Force base now and has changed a lot. The area we were in was about 3 miles northeast of the main part of the base. There were barracks there when the Army had it for training. It was called Camp Beale and had about 80,000 acres. The Army abandoned the camp many years before this took place. The Air Force reopened it in the 1960s. Go towards the mountains on the base until you see the thick forest area. I don't know if the barracks are still there or not. Likely not. In 1959, a friend and I went deer hunting in the hills above Marysville, California. At the time, Beale Air Force Base was closed, so we went on the base in the mountains. We camped out in an old barrack area that first night. My friend had his 2 retriever dogs with him. It was dark and we were in our bedrolls. We heard a very loud yell, almost a scream, coming from the woods about 100 yards away. The dogs went crazy and headed towards the wooded area. My friend and I grabbed our rifles and followed them. I have never heard a sound like that before. Just as we got a short distance away from the woods, we've seen something that the dogs were running around. It was on 2 feet. It grabbed one dog, threw it some distance, and swung on the other dog. I had it in the flashlight beam but couldn't see it too well. It turned towards us, and my friend said that it had a face like that of an ape. It bounded into the trees, and the dogs were called off by my friend. There was a loud crashing and breaking of bush and trees as the creature ran away. There was a lingering odor in the air. It had a mixture of body odor, feces, and skunk. We did not stay there that night. We were loading our gear and we heard a yell or scream again, only this time it was further away. About 6 years ago, they had a program on TV that had a recording of a noise believed to be a Bigfoot. It was the same sound I heard that night. At the time of this, I was stationed at Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield, California. A year later, I was stationed there at Beale. Wow, that was a frightening story told by a set of hunters. Now, the only thing I followed up, I read a little bit more on what happened to the dogs. And this is what I found further down in the report. It said, one dog was already hurt and the other was airborne. One dog suffered a large wound to its left side. He described the side as a torn, not a cut, but both dogs survived. Wow, that's a crazy, crazy story. But anyways, guys, now we're going to be off to the last story. And we're going to take a little bit of a twist. This is not a Bigfoot story. But you know what? I'll keep you guys in suspense. So here we go on the last story of the day. Now this story takes place on November 27th, 2019 in Ventura, California. On November 27th, around 2:45 a.m., I was in my living room with my son when this light appeared. The large flat beam of light came down vertically. It looked like a very wide flat beam of light. The beam covered quite a large area. I would say half of the entire length of the runway at the airport. When the light touched the ground, within a few seconds, the entire night sky lit up brighter than anything I have ever seen. It was very white and bright. My son was facing the window. I had my back to the window and noticed that the room lit up, so I turned and saw this huge white flat beam of light from the sky to the ground over the Camarillo airport. The light became very bright, almost white. Then the light in the house started flickering and surging. At that time, I turned away from the light and looked down my hall to see if the house was shaking, thinking that it might have been an earthquake. Frankly, I am very surprised it didn't blow the power, or at least the transformers, because you could tell that the surge was not a normal flicker, lights, power outage kind of event. Something was taxing the power. The entire event lasted less than 15 seconds. There was no sound from this at all. The sky was cloudy with rain, so when we went outside to look up, there was nothing that we could see because of the cloud cover. The light was so bright it must have covered a good 10 to 15 mile radius. My son felt like the light was maybe from an explosion or bomb, and in fact for a split second it felt like the windows would blow out, but there was no sound, no thunder and lightning, no explosion, nothing. It was completely silent. At that point, we waited to see if there were any police or fire department lighted cars or trucks going in the direction of the airport, but nothing. We got on social media, Twitter and Instagram, to see if anyone saw it. Again, nothing. Turned on the local news, nothing. Our cat was completely puffed up, as he does when he senses danger or another animal around. As I type this, a good 24 hours have passed, and we have not found anyone besides my son and I who saw this, which is even more baffling. Now, I'm curious if anybody at the Camarillo airport did see something. I mean, there had to be crew members or people cleaning up. I mean, the airport really never closes, does it? But anyways, guys, that's going to wrap up this week's encounter stories. So on that note, if you would like to share your encounter stories in a safe environment, please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. And again, your stories do not have to originate from Ontario, and they can be as anonymous as you would like. Well, guys, I just want to say one last thing. Please be safe and have yourself a fantastic day.